All right. Cool. So, okay, everyone, we are live. So, welcome to the fourth webinar in Striven's Job Seeker series. As you know, Striven, we've pulled together 11 webinars, have group coaching every Friday morning and one-on-one sessions for anyone that's recently had their role affected by redundancies or is job searching right now. Just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's volunteered their time to help us pull this together. We couldn't do it without you. That includes the wonderful Michelle who's joined us today. Anyone that doesn't know Michelle is the founder of Workling, and is going to be talking to us today all about gig work and exploring your options. Michelle's going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then we'll head into a Q&A session. And any questions or comments as we go, please pop them into the chat, and we'll get them afterwards. We'll get to them afterwards. So yeah, feel free to just write them in as we go, and as we get towards the end, we can get the wonderful Michelle to answer some of those. Last thing from me, we'll be recording this session, so we'll share the recording with everyone afterwards. Over to you, Michelle. Leave it over to you.
Thanks, Nathan. If you want to jump in the chat and just quickly introduce yourself, that would be amazing. I was just saying to Nathan before we started, I'm up in Noosa today, so I'm fresh out of the water. So hopefully that makes everyone incredibly jealous for those that are in cooler parts of the country. So I am the founder of Workling. I am a corporate escapee myself. So I spent my career working in internal roles, much like you guys have just stepped out of. I worked in the people and culture and organisation development space. When was it? 2018, 2019, I stepped out and started freelancing myself and really loved this way of working. My Workling journey started when I started to notice more and more people opting out of the traditional work model and going out to do their own thing. And the thing that really struck me was when I looked around my network, I could see the people who were making that change were not the average Joe Blows. They were not the underperformers. They were the top performers. And it was the excellent talent who was making this jump. So that really piqued my interest and started the Workling journey. So who is Workling? We are a community of independent talent. So we've got about 150 freelancers within our community at the moment. And we do a couple of things. We advocate for this work model. We create a sense of community and belonging for people who are working outside of the traditional traditional employment model. And we also connect businesses to these amazing talent. So today, I thought I will chat a little bit about what is gig work, whether or not it's for you, and share some tips. I'm by no means here to sell gig work as the way forward, and I'm sure all of you are really reevaluating what your careers will look like at the moment. But I thought I'd just share a few insights on this type of work. The thing that I love about the challenge that we're facing into around new ways of working is that the demand is there on both sides of the market and the world of work is really being disrupted. So on the business side, we know that businesses need more flexible models. As you have unfortunately just experienced, the way that they're currently flexing is to scale up with very expensive recruitment costs and scale down through very expensive and soul-destroying redundancies, which is just not a sustainable way to run a business. We know that 90% of leaders agree that a job-based model isn't necessarily the best way to fully design an organisation. So on that business side, we've really got leaders agitating for a more nimble workforce. On the talent side, we know that people want to work in a different way. This old, 9 to 5 has been disrupted. The job for life and now even jobs for life is not necessarily the way that people want to work. Over 50% of the US workforce is going to be working in a gig-based capacity by 2027. So we can see more and more people opting out of the traditional employment model and starting to work in a different way. So there's really that change on both sides of the market. So it isn't about casualising the workforce. It isn't about job loss. It's about people wanting to work in a different way and organisations needing to access talent in a different way. And it's that two-sidedness of the market that really interests me. The other reason why I really advocate for this type of work and challenge the assumption that all work needs to be done in jobs is that it's the way we're designing work right now is creating burnout. We're seeing a lot of women dropping out of the workforce, and also, again, as you just experienced, we're seeing these kind of cyclical redundancies that are not sustainable from an organisational perspective or from an individual perspective. So there's momentum building on both sides of the market. So let's first talk about what gig work is. I define gig work as people who are working on an outcome or project basis. So they are engaged by an organisation to deliver a piece of work. They're not stepping in to do a job, they're stepping in to do a deliverable. So an example of this might be come in and redesign our onboarding process. Gig-based work, people aren't tied to the one organisation. They're typically working across multiple organisations at once. So it's a lot more similar to the independent consulting model than it is to the job-based model. So we see people being set up with their own ABNs, they're set up as their own businesses, and they're working across a number of organisations delivering projects. The market is really yet to land on what we're calling these people. If we say gig workers, that kind of brings us back to the driver and delivery. If we're saying freelancers, that sounds a little bit, copy and comsy. Consultants, everyone cringes at. So at the moment, we're referring to this cohort of people as independent talent or on-demand talent. What it's important to recognise is it's quite a different talent segment to contractors. So we've always really bucketed this group of contingent workers into the one bucket, but really there's some different segments there. You've got your contractors who are doing 6, 12-month engagements to do a job. So it's still a job-based model. It might be a more fluid way to access that talent, but you're still engaging talent, whether that's through a fixed-term contract or a third-party payroll, to do a job. What we're looking at gig-based work is that you are being engaged to deliver an outcome. So it's still very fluid, and I think, as I said, the market is really needing to come up with a term that applies and really everyone can understand what we're talking about. So why are people going gig? There's probably 3 big reasons. So firstly, the autonomy. So being able to say yes to work that plays to your strengths, having control over the amount of work and the kind of work that you do, and the organisations that you want to work with. I see this all of the time. So at Workling, we don't have a gig or job board. We match our talent to business needs. So if a business connects with us and shares a need that they have, I might reach out to one of our worklings and say, hey, there's this awesome project with this organisation. Are you interested? Are you available? And they might say to me, I could do it, but I'm actually doing less of that work now. I really want to focus on my X, Y, and Z work. Love that. They might say to me, you know what? I've got a few things coming up. I don't want to overdo it. So I'll pass on that. And it's that kind of autonomy that you typically don't have in an in-house job. If your boss comes to you and says, hey, Michelle, can you go and deliver, I need you to work on this project, for you to turn around as an employee and go, no, I'd prefer not to. It's really not the sort of work I want to be doing right now. Or I'm a bit busy. I think I'll say no to that. Thanks, boss. It's just not the sort of conversation. I always celebrate it when people say no to a gig. I just think it's so empowering. and for people to be doing the sort of work that fills their buckets. So autonomy. The second one is flexibility and work-life balance. We're smack bang in the middle of school holidays at the moment, and people are really just wanting to design their life and their work in a different way, particularly on the back of COVID. So although we're starting to see more and more flexibility offered for in-house jobs, so as an employee, it's really stepping it up to a different level when you go out on your own and work as a freelancer. The vast majority of the time, it really doesn't matter where or when the work gets done. Yes, there might be some in-person elements to it, some meetings, some workshops, but other than that, it's completely up to you when you get that work done. If that's on the weekends or evenings or whenever works for you, it's just there's no one monitoring. All the business cares about are the deliverables are delivered by the agreed timelines. So that flexibility is super important. Certainly within Workling, we've seen many women opting for this sort of work, still being the primary carers within their families, and 2 big permanent full-time jobs just not working in their families, and have made a family decision for one of them to step into gig or on-demand work. So certainly that flexibility and work-life balance, we've had in the last few weeks, a few people saying no to gigs because school holidays were coming up. So just really being allowed to, enabled to flex your work around the life that you want to live. The third reason I would say that people look for gig-based work is to do work that allows them to have impact and aligns to their values. So people who work freelance still want to come in and deliver awesome outcomes. In fact, even more than ever before, because their reputation is on the line. With every gig they're engaged for, they want to absolutely shine and knock it out of the park, because they know that word of mouth is king. And if they don't nail it, their reputation and their future livelihood is at risk. So being able to have that impact without being caught up in the organizational politics is really appealing. And being able to deliver the piece of work, and if it's an organization that didn't really align with their values, or the leader maybe didn't align with their values, they just politely decline future engagements. So it kind of comes back to that autonomy, but doing work that aligns to their values and allows them to have the impact that they know they can without being as caught up in the organizational systems that you are as an employee. Having said all of that, there are, of course, some downsides as well. And there's really 2. The first, and we hear it's the first thing that anyone will tell us, is the isolation. People miss being a part of a team. So when they come out of an internal role and they start freelancing, they really miss being a part of that team. And that's something at Workling we're really trying to overcome. So how do we create that sense of community and connection and team that isn't there? So we're doing lots of things with our community at the moment to start to reimagine what that sense of belonging and inclusion feels like when you work for yourself. So that's a really big one. The other big one, of course, is the lumpy pipeline. You don't get that beautiful steady paycheck landing in your bank account every fortnight or every month. And so often when it rains, it pours, and then you've got these quieter periods. So it's a really lumpy pipeline of work, and it can be really stressful. Nothing is certain. A bit of work can feel so strong, like it's going to land, and then it falls over and crumbles at the last minute. And it can be really challenging, because you're always having to not only deliver the work that you've committed to, but also look to where that next piece of work is coming from. So it is really challenging, and obviously comes with a degree of financial risk. Not everyone is in the position to be able to move into this work model. And I think it's worth acknowledging there is a level of privilege probably that comes with it. For a lot of people, they are in a financial position where they can take a bit of a risk. I know I've had friends who have had periods where they've freelanced. They've not gone without work. They have had steady, constant work, but the actual stress of when's this hot streak going to end? When's this hot streak going to end was actually too big for them. And while it wasn't the reality, it was the perception of the risk. They actually went back into an in-house role. So isolation and that lack of steady income are probably the two main things. We've always looked at permanent employment as the most stable and secure form of employment, and unfortunately, you have all just learnt that isn't necessarily the case. And I think this perception will change over time, because I remember talking to someone in the sports industry at the start of the COVID pandemic, and she said to me, I will never find myself in this situation again where I'm reliant on one stream of income. If you look at a freelancer, independent talent who has a portfolio career, they might be doing some coaching over here. They might have 2 clients on a retainer over here. They might be doing a few different projects. And when times get tough, maybe they lose 3 of their 5 clients, but they've still got 2 income streams. Whereas, as unfortunately you would know, if you've got the one job and you lose the one job, you then have 0 jobs. I still think that permanent employment is a more secure way to work, but it's interesting just to question what security means and whether that looks like having one more stable stream of income or several streams of income. So there are a few of the pros and cons. So is this the right move for you? I don't know. I can't tell you. But there's 3 things I would encourage you to consider and reflect on. So they're the financial, social, and the values. So financially, think about how big a risk this is for you. You can't just announce to the world that you're working on a gig basis and expect that your inbox will be filled with requests. There is work in building up. There might be a period of time where you don't have a constant stream of work. So just thinking about that financial impacts, what would that revenue need to look like each month in order to come out at a similar level as to what a salary might look like, and what might that day rate that you're basing your work on look like. Social is important. What does work mean from you from a social perspective? Do you love being a part of a team? How would you feel working for yourself? What sort of strategies would you put in place so that you do have a good, strong network of people around you? I remember someone saying to me recently that they no longer talk to their friends and their family about work because their friends and their family just don't really understand what it's like to run your own business. So making sure you have a good network of people. But if your social needs from work are to be a part of an ongoing team, then this might not be the right work model. The last thing is your values, or probably more so your motivators. So what actually fills your bucket? What's most important to you, and what are some of your personality traits that might give you a hint as to whether this is the right type of work for you? So if you love structure and you knowing what you're doing over the next few weeks, if you like having that clear plan and that stable approach to work, probably not. If you love getting out and talking to people and generating new opportunities, that's a tick. This might be the right type of work for you. Do you like being a creator or a decision maker? When you step out of the organizational structure, you're stepping out of decision making. So your role becomes more of advice and delivering the work, as opposed to being in a leadership role and being in a decision maker role. So do you like to lead, or are you a collaborator? So think about your previous jobs, and if you've done any of those sort of personality assessments before, dig those out and blow the dust off those, and think about what is it that you know about yourself and the work that you've delivered to date, and think about, are there any clues in there that will give you a hint as to whether gig-based work is for you? So if you are getting to the point and you think this might be for you, and I'm never buying or selling in this space, I'm just giving the information, and there's always going to be job-based work. I shouldn't say always, because who knows what the future holds, but organizations need that constant workforce. So there's absolutely rich opportunities in that space. And this is simply an alternative to consider as you start to look at what your career looks like for moving forward. And I don't advise one way or another, but I'm just presenting the options. So if it is something that you are interested in, where do you start? So firstly, think about your strengths. So what is it that you're good at? What would your service offering be? What in your background, what have you delivered in the past that's going to be appealing to others? Often I encourage people who are new to freelancing to think about what's the work that you can do versus the work you want to do, and looking at things across that spectrum, because in the early days, it might actually be that you do all of it. And then as you build your customer base and build your profile, you start to really hone in on where your passion is and where your true strengths are and the sort of work you want to be doing. So think about what you are offering businesses. What is your service offering that you're offering businesses? And provide really clear examples of where you've got results in those areas in the past. At Workling, we have, as a part of our talent profiles, what we call a gig library. And it's where our community capture the work that they've delivered in the past. So if they want to position themselves as a D&I consultant or a copywriter or what have you, they will have certain gigs or projects, because it might be something that they've delivered in an in-house role that they've delivered in the past that really demonstrate that service that they provide. So getting really clear on how you're going to position yourself and the stories you can tell about what you've done in the past. We don't want to see your CV. CVs don't really have a place in the gig world, but those strengths that you bring and examples of where you've delivered that work in the past. My second piece of advice would be start building those relationships, get comfortable with networking. You're not there to sell, you're there to develop long-term relationships. So I always say to people, reach out to all the amazing people you've worked with in the past. Think about those besties you've had in each job in your career. Reconnect with them. It doesn't matter if it's been 5 years, 10 years, just reach out to them for a coffee and they will be so happy to hear from you. And that will be your first stepping stone, getting comfortable reaching out to people and extending your network. And as long as you do it in an authentic, value-adding way where you're not asking for anything or you're not trying to sell to people, it will pay off. The other thing I would encourage you to do is to find your voice on social media. You're probably sick of hearing my voice on social media, so find yours instead. Get comfortable with it. Think about what the sort of work you want to be doing and start talking about it. Share articles about it, write a blog about it, just share your thoughts on it. It might only be twice a week you start doing it, but it will pay off. You won't get the traction straight away, but if you're putting good content out there, it will pay off. It might be 6 months down the track, but it will pay off. And engage with other people's content. The algorithm will not like it if you're only doing your own stuff, but engage with everyone else's content as well. When I asked our Workling community for their advice that they wanted me to share was to just explore your offering and start with a really broad offering. And over time, you'll work out the sort of work you like to do and want to do, and you can narrow it down from there. So don't worry so much about having this super, super crisp offering, but you can refine it over time. What else did they tell me? They told me to surround yourself with good people and people who are perhaps a few months or even 6 months further down the track than you, and you'll learn so much of those people who have trodden the same path. And and just get comfortable with being uncomfortable was the other piece of advice that our wonderful community shared. So I've talked a lot, but I will stop now and I will hear your questions.
Hey, Michelle, really appreciate that. Some amazing advice. And a lot of it I resonate with as well, being obviously in recruitment for quite a long time and starting my own company, which started from a gig role myself. And I've also been a contract recruiter for a number of years. And I think that you touch on some important points, especially around, don't try and sell yourself. It's almost networking. I was talking to someone last night and I, gave them the heads up that, don't go crazy on trying to sell yourself. But I think the gig economy is almost like a word of mouth referral. So you do a great job for somebody else and all of a sudden they tell their friends or they tell their company and all of a sudden it goes on and on. But yeah, some really good points there. Really enjoyed it. Anybody with any questions, please reach out. Just put them in the chat and I can share these with Michelle. First time I've hosted this, I do believe there is sometimes a short, uncomfortable delay. So if we go quiet for 30 seconds, that's fine.
That's fine. I think the other thing, as we just wait for some questions to pop in, I think, like you just said with those relationships, I'm an HR chick, so I don't exactly know what I'm talking about when I talk about sales, but it's a long sales lead time. So if you go out and have a coffee with someone, it's not like you're going to go, oh yeah, so I'm working on grad programs now, and they go, oh my gosh, we need a grad program. Why don't you start next week and come and do it? It's just, it doesn't work like that. So even if you did go in with the sell, people aren't ready to be sold to. It would be a fluke if they had that exact need at that exact moment and were the decision maker for that exact thing and hadn't had the budget. So I think building relationships and listening and, the number of people that I've met with and connected with and had a very human conversation, and then 9 months later it's like, oh hey, do you have someone in Workling who could come in and do this? So it's not I think if you approach these things with generosity, there's certainly a few people within Workling who have built their entire practice from the basis of just generosity and helping people, and reached out to a number of different startups and being like, right, I have, X number of years in HR. Is there I'm happy to give you 2 hours of free consultation and advice. Like, what can I come in and help you with? Or I'm happy to write one free blog for you. I don't know. There's something about that generosity. I constantly see it coming back to people. I call it career karma. If you, do good, then it all just comes back to you.
Great insight. Absolutely. I think, what you give is what you get, right? And the only thing I'd sort of pass on as well is Rome wasn't built in a day. And as Michelle points out, I don't like the idea of jumping and saying, hey, I'm going to go to freelance now, I'm going to forget my recruitment role. I think it's a slow burn. So you almost start working nights. So you always got your 9 to 5 role, and then take some side gigs that you might speak on at night, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, okay, I got 2, 3, 4 of those. Then it builds up over time, and then you're like, hang on, you know what? I've got the confidence and I've got the financial backing behind me to now take this on at a full-time role. But yeah, good insights. Got a good question from Mitch. I'll share this and hopefully you can answer it.
Favorite part of this type of work, and how have you doubled down on it? What I constantly hear from, the word that I constantly hear from our community, so I'm not freelancing myself anymore. I'm wrangling our wonderful community of freelancers, but the word I hear from them constantly and experienced myself is liberating. That is the word that I hear again and again. It's just liberating. People feel free and feel in control of the sort of work that they're doing. I think doubling down on it, look, for me, so if I step back into the kind of Workling mode for myself, what I'm waiting to see in the market is recruiters and people and culture team starting to see freelancers and gig workers as a part of the talent ecosystem. So right now within organizations, work needs to be done. What jobs do we need to do? We push all the work into a job or a few jobs. We assume that we need the same number of people with the same skills all the time. And we know that isn't true because things fluctuate and you need different things at different times. So the thing that I am banking on, you know, as a startup, we all bank on what the future is going to look like. For me, I'm placing a bet on that this talent segment in freelancers and gig talent need to start be seen as a part of, strategically as a part of the talent ecosystem. So when recruiters or HR are briefed on work to be done, we can start to go, okay, well, which parts of this work is best suited to a job and which parts of this are best suited as a deliverable? And there is just so much opportunity there. But I think the things that I see from our community, who, particularly those stepping out of internal roles for the first time, I think the best thing that they do is just network and talk to people and be patient. Because, like I said, it does come back to you. Reputation is everything and word of mouth is everything. And once you do have a relationship, finding really authentic ways to stay top of mind so that the next time the leader has a piece of work, they're knocking on your door again. And coming back to the social media advice that I gave, having a presence on social media is a great way to stay top of mind because you're not bombing them in the inbox, you're not calling them, there's no hard sell there. But if you're creating really great content, then you're staying top of mind for the leaders that you want to work with.
Awesome. No, good insight. Well, any more questions? I think Michelle's done an amazing job at, I guess, articulating a lot, so we don't have a heap of questions. But if there's any more questions, please send them through. So I'll wait another 30 seconds, see if we get any more questions.
I want to know what's in those boxes behind you, Nathan.
Oh, a whole heap of merch. So lots of hoodies, notepads, water bottles, merch, and more merch.
Lots of merch, all the merch.
I'm running out of office. I'm running out of space. It's like I'm covered by boxes. This has come from someone who loved to have a minimalistic office. Like I used to love these nice startup offices. I just have a laptop and nothing else on the desk, and that's how I'm used to working. And now I'm just claustrophobic. I'm like, go away. It's giving me anxiety looking behind me. Normally I have a backdrop, but I haven't got it on this platform. So, all right, awesome. No more questions. I'll end the broadcast. Michelle, thank you so much. We'll share the link on the LinkedIn page. So anyone can go back and record and watch this. And anyone that is struggling, to find something at the moment, I think this is seriously something you should consider. It's certainly served me well in my career, and also, you don't want to be in this situation again. I guess I hate the fact that job, you sort of your job is basically your destiny is in someone else's control, and that's something I don't like. Michelle, thank you once again. And any more questions, I'll send through to you. And hey, if anyone else has any questions, I'm sure Michelle will be nice enough or generous enough to answer them. So feel free to hit her up on LinkedIn and send those through directly.
All right, I'm going back to the beach.
Enjoy. Thanks, Michelle. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.